But I would like to go ahead and get our program started by introducing President Johnson. Thank you so much for hosting this lovely event, and I'd like to turn it over to you right away.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Honored to have you here. My name is Dan Johnson, serve as president here last 15 years, and just grateful and blessed to be really knee-deep in this whole thing of servant leadership. We've been at it. It's our 50th year this year, so we had a lot of celebrations on this annual year, but you know, in the midst of immense challenge, we're just blessed in our 50th year, largest enrollment we've ever had, both undergraduate but also as new students, and we just have this opportunity to really have the core ethos of what we do. We kind of have a Christian servant leadership model. And our quad is the divine servant. It's a picture of Jesus washing his disciples' feet, which is about as much of a snapshot of what servant leadership really is. And that's what we do here as college. We want to send out graduates. We have about 40-some majors. They're going out in the secular world and as business leaders, as education leaders, whatever it is, but we want them to leave here knowing that our purpose in life is, in our case, just to love God and love other people, to serve others as we have been served by our Lord. And so on behalf of WLC, welcome. It's just great to have you here. We count it a great blessing to be involved in this moment in higher ed in this community, and to really have as the backbone of what we do for 50 years this whole concept of servant leadership, in our case, built on what Christ has done. So welcome to WLC, and I'll turn it back over. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you again. And I just realized I made the mistake of I think I introduced myself to everybody as you walked in, but I am Deanna Lightsky. I'm from Milwaukee School of Engineering, and I have the pleasure of serving on the advisory board for the Wisconsin Servant Leader Group, and work closely with Mr. Pieper to make sure that we are able to host these events throughout the year. So one of the first things that I get to do this morning or this afternoon at this point is just to make sure that we are guided by your expectations. We are here to serve all of you, to make sure that this event meets your expectations. You all took the time out of your days to be here today, and we want to make sure that we make the most of this event.
So let's also, I had some time to chat with Matt and Stephanie, my fellow teammates who will be dialoguing with you today, and I just want to thank them. And then to Wisconsin Lutheran College, thank you for being so hospitable to each and every one of us. So, 5 eclectic women and Jesuits. What's this going to be about? I was raised by a cadre of women, 5 very eclectic women. They were my bedrock. My immigrant Polish Busha, she got out of an abusive relationship and was a cleaning woman to support her family. She didn't drive. She went to church daily and sunned her knees to soothe her arthritis through the years. She died very peacefully praying the rosary. My Irish grandma, she was the school secretary in a grammar school, and she frankly, at the age of 80, learned to shed her prejudice about other cultures and went on for 15 more years enjoying life with this really newfound understanding. Aunt Rita, who was really not an aunt, she was a second cousin, my Irish grandma's first cousin, and she would have back then been called a matron, right? You know, someone who wasn't married, who maybe had a love at one point, and she was someone you could always count on, someone who was there for a laugh or an Irish zinger. My mom, she was pretty gritty. Her dad told her, you can either be a nurse or you can be a teacher. So just to confuse them, she decided to be a psychiatric nurse. And in that work, in that career, she had such diversity of friends. It was just incredible. She died in her 50s after a pretty tough life, actually. And my stepmom, the 5th of these amazing women, was an East Coast intellect, had a bazillion degrees, and then finally found her calling as a children's hospital chaplain, and then later in life with her master's as a therapist into her 70s. She died just recently, suddenly, from a seizure. So from all those amazing women, I learned that being present is much more important than being perfect. You've probably heard about Brené Brown, the researcher and storyteller. She talks often about vulnerability. There's a great TED Talk out there about it. She has this quote about imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we're all in this together. So how do I apply this concept of presence, not perfection? At home, I've helped raise 3 step kiddos full-time. Their mom passed away, and we also fostered our niece. And I know in my interactions with all those kiddos who are now all young adults, I was never perfect. I probably didn't meet their needs when they needed me to meet their needs, but I didn't stop trying. And I really am still trying to learn from every situation. And this is true with my husband as well. I would say our process isn't always the same, but what we tend to agree on is outcome. So again, sort of being present, not being perfect. In my work life and my volunteer life, I've learned to really practice incremental diligence. So, the whole story of the tortoise and the hare? I think I've decided I'm the tortoise. Just the stick-to-itness at work and at home and in my volunteer work. Over the time, I guess I've slowly learned to say, I don't know. I made that mistake. It's hard to say sometimes. How can I support you? How do you actually need me to meet your needs? So those eclectic women, they also taught me to love myself, and it's tough, and you've got to do it day in and day out. It's a daily habit. I was a heavy-set teen and kiddo. I had a middle part when it wasn't cool to have a middle part. And my family, in their very, very subtle ways, loved me so mightily. And really, they have taught me to do the same for myself and for others. So where can we employ these things at work? There's this woman, Dina Smith. She's an executive coach out there. She's published a few Harvard Business Review articles. She has an article out there about the emotional labor of being a leader and how to manage it. She talks much about promoting self-compassion from the top down. Research confirms that leaders who practice self-compassion have higher emotional intelligence, have higher resiliency, and higher integrity. In short, they're just better leaders. So, at home, we've all had our ups and downs and our failures, and we need to learn from those and take that experience forward. And I think if we practice self-love, self-compassion, both at home and at work, we can be stronger, better community members. And self-love isn't about having a huge sense of self. It's really about loving yourself and forgiving yourself, because if you don't start there, you can't be available to others. Which leads me to this concept of blessed dissatisfaction. When I graduated from grad school, my commencement speaker was a man named Brian Massengale. He's a theologian from Fordham University. And he had this whole concept about blessed dissatisfaction. It really resonated for me. And it's about sort of evolving, striving. And I think the way you can think about this at work is, okay, we've made a mistake, team. I have your back 150%. So now what are we going to learn from this? And at home, if it wasn't if my stepdaughter didn't get the interaction she needed from me, how can I show up better for her, right? Blessed dissatisfaction is always striving, how can I be better at what I'm supposed to be doing for this world? And of course, blessed dissatisfaction creates some blind spots. So for me at the office, it is not celebrating our successes as a team. I know that is my biggest downfall. And at home, it's always overanalyzing. Did I do that right? What was that? When she said that to me, what did that mean? So that leads me sort of to the next place, the Jesuits. You're wondering, when were those Jesuits going to come in here? The Examen. So St. Ignatius, he was the founder of the Jesuit order. He had this concept of the Examen, reflecting on our day, where did I find God? Where did I find the good in this day? And even if you're not spiritual, you can really use the concept as a mental wellness practice. Like, where did I find God? Where did I find the good in this day, even this really tough day? And that's what this day is about. The crux of what we're talking about is contemplation, and then putting contemplation into action. For me, the daily examine is in a dog walk. I can't go a day without being outside. You don't like the outdoors? I love the outdoors, and I need it with my 2 puppies. And there is something about the immediacy of their need to sniff and smell and look and ponder that just grounds me to think about what the day was about. It lets me be introspective. And I see it sort of come out in my dreams. You know the time in your morning where you're waking up, but you're still dreaming? I process a lot that I sort of also thought through on my dog walk. And so then there's the concept of magis, which is the Latin word for the more. And it's really about what more can I do? So after I've examined, I've reflected, what more can I do for the betterment of the world and our human community? There's another Jesuit, his name is Pedro Arrupe. He's a Spanish Jesuit, and he ministered to the Japanese people during the bomb of Hiroshima. And he has sort of this beautiful quote, I don't know if you can see it, and this is a part of it, there's a longer version, but let me just read a bit of it. What you are in love with, what seizes your imagination will affect everything. It decides what will get you out of bed in the morning, what you will do with your evenings, how you will spend your weekend, what you read, whom you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything. For me, this is really about purpose, about vocation. We all know that happiness is fleeting. Purpose and passion, they're really sustainable. Research shows, actually, that if we actively pursue happiness, we feel more unhappy and more lonely. And that finding meaning and purpose, that's really where we need to head. Happiness is fleeting. Purpose and passion are sustainable. For me, finding a vocation has been the most powerful way to love myself and to contribute. I both in volunteering, home, work, all of it bleeds together for me personally. It is vocation. I have my entire career sort of organized people towards the same purpose, the same North Star, and it is that to get at systemic issues, and those kinds of things have really allowed me to get beyond like seeking happiness and really feel fulfilled with vocation and purpose. So really, I guess now I'm at this place. The next journey, it's aging. It's all about aging, right? And so I'm hoping that the tools I've learned with being present, loving myself, believing in blessed dissatisfaction, using the examine and magis, get me to like being okay with aging, menopause, neck never looking the way it did when I was 20, and really knowing that I've got probably 20 more years on the planet and I've got to make the best of it and really need to contribute for our human community. So I hope I have a renaissance like my Irish grandma, and I hope that I'm in awe of the sun's healing powers of my knees like my Polish immigrant grandma. So thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you all for allowing me to share some of my lessons learned in servant leadership. So I'm fourth generation. I am president at Century Fence, and so we're a construction business. And as I think about how do we adapt for the future, you know, servant leadership, when I talk to people, they say, yeah, it's a way. I'm going to make the case that it's the only way. So with the lessons that I want to share with you today, I look forward to discussing it with you, because I know I have got a lot to learn, but here's three lessons that I've learned so far in my journey. So what I hope you can take away is 4,000 weeks, what do you stand for? And we're walking home. So when I talk about my journey, I have to start with where I was raised. I got to experience love firsthand, and not everyone gets to experience that. So I hit the lottery in my childhood. I grew up in Virginia, and I never had any thoughts of moving to Wisconsin. But little did I know that my grandfather and my grandmother, they live in Waukesha, right near Carroll University. And the seed was planted at a very young age. I would visit for Thanksgiving and Christmas growing up, and I would get the occasional tour at our Waukesha office back in the day for Century Fence at Silvernail Road, and the seeds were planted. But I was so determined that I was going to go be a big shot, and that I wanted to go make money. Money, 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 money. So this is a picture of my first day at SunTrust Robinson Humphrey in their investment banking division for selling family businesses. And while I was selling family businesses for over a year, I got to be on these conference calls, and all they ever talked about was the ROI. There was never any conversation of the people within those businesses. And so for me, I started asking, there's got to be a little bit more to this thing called business. There's got to be a little bit more to this game of capitalism. So that's when I gave my grandfather a call, and was my first true interest in family business. And he said, you got to go get married, and then you can come up. So I got married to my high school sweetheart, Chelsea, and we jumped in the U-Haul, and we planted ourselves right next to Lakefront Brewery. So we lived downtown, and we were so convinced that we were never going to leave Milwaukee. We weren't going to do that suburb thing. Yeah. It changed pretty quickly. But when I joined the company, when I walked in the front doors, we were on typewriters and dot matrix printers, and I was like, holy smokes, what did I get myself into? The first thing I wanted to do was take action, to change things. But I had some really amazing mentors, and Mr. Pieper is one of those mentors, to seek to understand before seeking to be understood. So my first 7 years in the business was seeking to understand, not to shake it all up in one fell swoop. And during this 7 years in the second chair, I was in listening mode. I was learning from my grandparents, going on, and I still do, go on road trips with my grandparents to our various locations, meeting our people, and truly understanding where people are in their journeys, listening. And throughout my time here in Wisconsin, I always make it home. And when I make it home, I go see my family. And in this picture is my mom and my best friend from high school. But something really sudden that changed my life in 2017. I lost my mom suddenly. She was 56, and she died from heart failure. And it was a shock to me. I thought that I had my mom with me for the next 40, 50 years to be alongside me as I'm a parent, and as I seek to be a good steward at Century Fence. And so I wrote a parting note to my mom. I said, I didn't get to say goodbye. I love you and hope to make you proud. And when I wrote that, I didn't know what I meant by that, but I was going to try to find out and reflect on how I could make her proud. And the first thing that my mom's passing required me to do was reflect on my life. We get 4,000 weeks. 4,000 weeks. This right here, these are 4,000 dots. You get 4,000 weeks. That's the average lifespan of an American, 78 years, 4,000 weeks. So when I think about my life, I'm already really far down the screen. And the best way to fill these dots is in connection and in service to others. Viktor Frankl said, the door to happiness opens out. It's in service to others. And so for me, as I'm seeking to fill the rest of these dots, it's in service to others. We get 4,000 weeks. And so I got a degree in leadership studies, but I will say my true degree in leadership studies is in parenting. So this picture was 5 weeks ago at Freighter, and parenting really makes you think about what you stand for. And I think there's one important question in leadership. It's the real question. What do you stand for? Think about the worst boss you've ever had. Just think about it. Don't say anything. What did they stand for? Just give it 5 seconds. What did they stand for? I'm pretty sure I can tell you what they stood for. They stood for themselves. So we watch Lion King at my house probably every day, and we boo every time the bad boss gets on. What did he stand for? He stood for himself. Now think about the best coach, the best teacher, the best boss, the best leader you've ever had. What did they stand for? They stood for others. C.S. Lewis says, don't think less of yourself, but think of yourself less. Think of others. What do you stand for? So, I became president in January of 2022, and I guess that maybe as a younger person, you think for leadership, you close fist, you gotta go, gotta move, gotta go, go, go. I think the way to lead is to unclench the fist and to open the hand and to serve. And when we come to that appreciation of opening the hand, we are allowing the opportunity to walk each other home. So being in a family business, it's an opportunity to honor legacy, honor past, to stand on the shoulders of those that have come before me, but also to think about the future and plan for generations to come. So it's this balance of walking each other home. I have the honor to walk with my grandfather and to walk with the future generations at Century Fence. And one of the ways we're doing that is we know what we stand for. And a part of servant leadership is weeding the garden. And if someone doesn't fit your values, this isn't the place for you. And so what we are doing at Century Fence is knowing what we stand for and not being fraudulent. So for us, these are our values at our company, and we have done a lot of great conversation within our leadership team at Century Fence, and we tell stories around these values. So humble, no ego. Hungry, onward, ever forward. Together, we're walking each other home. And one of the ways that we build trust is through common work. We don't bring in fancy consultants to work on trust. We go do things together to build common trust. And my favorite quote is, "We're all just walking each other home," by Ram Dass. For me, it grounds me and really appreciates me, the journey that I'm on at Century Fence. And so, to summarize my takeaways, 4,000 weeks, what do you stand for? We're walking each other home. Thank you. And this is the book that Mr. Pieper was talking about, and I write a weekly meditation, if there's any interest in that. So, thank you.
And I have been in the role for a little over 24 months. City Year is an organization that really works on building the next generation of leaders while serving our young people in school. It's an organization that's really built on a whole bunch of traditions. So when you think about camp, the police department, the military, you don't think about City Year, but you should, because it's built on those same traditions. A lot of those traditions are meant to drive connection to people. We operate from the value of Ubuntu. And for those that don't know, this is a term from the Zulu tribe from South Africa that translates to, I am a person through other people. My humanity is tied to yours. And so one of the traditions that we have at City Year that helps us really connect and inspire and share our humanity is called Our Life's Work. So today I'm going to share my story of servant leadership through sharing my story of my life's work. I am a person that doesn't believe that servant leaders are born. I think they are created through our experiences and through our journeys. I have these tenets of servant leadership. There's 10 of them. that I use to guide my work because they're lessons that I have learned from some amazing people in my life along the way. My husband does not like sell instead of tell. He says it's offensive, but really what I mean by that is like, how do you think about collaborating with people? How do you bring people into the fold? How do you look not only from your perspective, but from their perspective, which my husband says is not sell instead of tell. I am not a Milwaukee native. I am from Wynne, Arkansas. I moved to Milwaukee when I was 4, although I consider this to be my hometown. If you could all stand up and see this other screen, it'd be a much better picture. But this is a picture of my mom and my 4 siblings. My mom was a single mom of 4. And why my mom is so special to me and taught me so much about servant leadership is my mom's mom, my grandma, did not like her. I feel like my grandma had disdain for my mom, and we never knew why. My mom lived in a world where she was not allowed to dream. And so I have the most amount of love and respect for her because as a single mom, she took these 4 kids and she went on a journey. She was part of that migration up north to find better work and a better life. And she gave up the life that she knew to make a better life for us here in Milwaukee. So when I was 4, my mom moved all of us to Milwaukee. That handsome young man in the picture is my stepdad, who came into my life about 4 years after we were here in Milwaukee and welcomed my mom and her 4 children with loving arms. And in this space is where I really learned about how you cultivate trust, how you think about others and not yourself. We are Southern Baptists through and through. And I think in that space from my parents, I learned how to act with humility and how to lead with humility. And those are tenets that I carry out every day in my life. I think my dad taught me as a servant leader how to think long term, right? He wasn't thinking short term, taking on this mom and her 4 kids. And I will say that 3 of us were very good and 1 person was naughty, who shall remain nameless. I was a student of Milwaukee Public Schools. One thing that, as Deanna shared, you will not learn on LinkedIn about me is that I wasn't a great student. Deanna, I hope you're timing because I forgot to set mine. I wasn't a great student. I have this PhD, which I think makes people believe that you are smart, you are intelligent. I think it's just an act of perseverance, in my opinion. I did not learn to read until I was in 4th grade. As a matter of fact, I say I was so good at 3rd grade, Milwaukee Public Schools allowed me to do it twice. And through my experience in school, the reason that I learned to read was about my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Bell. Mrs. Bell was a jewel. She invited me into her family. She believed in me until I could believe in myself. And she is the reason that I am standing here today. So as a servant leader, she was willing to act with humility. She was willing to sit alongside of me until I learned the things that I needed to learn to be whole. As I said, sell instead of tell really means seeing who that person is and giving them what they need. She did that for me. She cultivated a culture of trust in that classroom that we had. I've taken that lesson and tried to cultivate a culture of trust in every organization that I have had the privilege of leading. Ms. Bell valued diversity in our classroom and taught me that who I was and taught my classmates who we were was exactly who we needed to be. This is the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where I attended college. I will say that's an interesting story. I did very well in high school after I learned to read, of course, and thought that I was going to leave high school and be a Navy SEAL. The problem with that was one of the most critical skills that you need is to be able to swim. I can't swim, y'all. And so my best friend in high school, when we talk about having that community and her servant leadership, drug me to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where I joined Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And in this sorority is where I learned about friendship. I learned how to work with people from different groups. I know we say that that thing that happened in the 70s was a show, but it was actually people's real lives. And as a black woman growing up in the 70s, what I learned was that I needed to assimilate, to survive, to move ahead. And what this group of women taught me was that who I was okay. They created that culture of trust. They created that space for me to be able to show up as my whole self. I spent 20 years of my career working in Milwaukee Public Schools. It was a gift. It was a pleasure. And all of these pictures are pictures of young people that I had the privilege of serving, who taught me how to be humble, who taught me that it was my responsibility as a servant leader to create a culture of trust, that I needed to think long term because I couldn't do a quick fix. I think in education we often think about this sense of urgency, right? And that urgency leads us to take action to solve a problem that may not even exist or that we created. And I think what I learned from working with young people is that it is okay to stop. It is okay to think. It is okay to give yourself those moments of contemplation as a leader so that you can take action and your action leads to the impact that you want. Don't let a sense of urgency lead to making foolish steps. That's what I learned from working with these young people. I have 1:30 seconds, Dick, so I'm not going to quite get to where I wanted to get to, but I do want to point out that in that middle picture is a picture of me and Kyle Richards from the Housewives. And that picture is there as a reminder. Yes, I was at a conference. It was great. Is a reminder that as servant leaders, sometimes we convince ourselves that that leadership means that we have to suffer. It doesn't. As a servant leader, you will serve best when you are whole, when you take the time that you need to care for yourself, because in caring for yourself and making sure you are ready, you will be the best of service to others. So that's why that picture is there. And yes, I watch every Housewife franchise, and I'm not ashamed. I'm going to skip right to the end. That was my doctoral journey, because right now I have the privilege of serving at City Year Milwaukee. And one of the things we talk about is always, why do you serve? And I think every day as servant leaders, we have to continue to ask ourselves why we do what we do. And I serve because I have a deep desire for all scholars in this community to have the best opportunity to live the life that they choose. Not the life that other people say they should choose, but the life that they choose. I believe we have an obligation to ensure that all scholars are prepared for life with all the tools they need to be successful, and they feel empowered to show up as their whole selves. So every day, I wake up as a servant leader, and I remind myself, this is why I'm doing what I do, because the work is going to be hard. So I'm going to end. This is a prayer from St. Freeze's that talks about service. And so I'm going to ask everybody in this room to read this with me. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. I thank all of you in this room for the service that you provide to others each and every day. Have a great rest of the day, and we're going to bring Deanna back up. I think for me, it was when I transitioned out of the school district and into nonprofit. I left the school district because I just had become so overwhelmed with all of the things that were happening, and realized, like, in that space that I wasn't being good for my family, I wasn't being good for work. And I've tried to carry, like, those lessons that I've learned about when too much is too much, into every other aspect of my work. There is no such thing as work-life balance. It is what you need it to be.
I would say about a year and a half ago is when I really understood the importance of it. Theoretically, I understood it prior to that, and it was a book for me that really resonated. It was called 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. That was really took it to the next step for me.
I think when I came to terms with the fact that you don't need to have work-life balance, that for me, blending all of it, like creating vocation, was the way I wanted to live life. I think that was where I appreciated self-care in a different way.
For the first 7 years of my journey at Century Fence, I was in the second chair, so I had the privilege of getting to listen and see. And I just, for 7 years, I was just writing down ideas of different values and behaviors that I believe brought out the best in our organization. And over time, just whittled it down, and then working with the leadership team at Century Fence, we identified stories from our past and from our present that resonated and stood for those respective values. And for us, or for me, I think that those three values creates an ideal team player for our organization.
For me, I get the privilege of working with 17 to 25-year-olds and making sure that they are getting mentored, they are getting supported in the way that they deserve. In my previous job to this, I was an executive coach for school leaders. So I think that mentorship is a natural part of like who I am. It's important. And for me, it actually fills my cup, right? I was saying to Matt and Meg before, I'm a woman of 51, and at 55, I'm going to retire. I knew that when I was 21, and so my mind is always thinking about succession planning and who's next, and how am I setting up the next generation, because I will be on a beach in North Carolina in 4 years. So.
At the Children's Wisconsin Foundation, that is like an element of Children's Wisconsin. So we can operate like a little unit, a little business unit. There are about 50 of us that are really the sales force for Children's Wisconsin. So with our team, we were sort of vacillating for a while about a lot of the leadership are Gen X. I'm 51. Are Gen Xers, and we were commiserating about like, are we going to find folks with the same DNA? Because people work really hard in the foundation and for the mission, and so we actually like came to terms with some values systems to like screen for what we're looking for in the next generation, because we decided Gen Z and the next generation after them, they do have the moxie and the gratitude. It's sort of now understanding how to interview them and what their needs are when they get to us. And so we put together a whole system in place both for our interviewing and for our retention program within the foundation to model moxie and optimism and sort of the attributes that we're looking for. But it does take a lot of intentionality to find the next generation of servant leaders.
The world actually looks to the United States. And I got lots of examples. You've heard some of them over the years. They look to the United States. We have 9 cities, 10 active monthly roundtables, Wisconsin institutions in servant leadership. I mean, there are companies and organizations that are coming behind this. The testimony of 200 plus YouTube's videos that these gentlemen have been good enough to put there, they are good too. They are good. Papers, studies, all Wisconsin stories. There's a reboot meeting, which we're going to talk about right here. As a result of the International Summit, we took that information, pulled it forward. We found people that were interested that before had not been exposed, and some really home runs. There's a couple of them are sitting in the room. And we gathered, there was 30 people invited to participate in a SWOT analysis individually on their own. We provide them a ton of material from our state surveys and the international conference. And from that, they gave us their SWOT analysis. That then was brought to a meeting. One afternoon in Fond du Lac. All of them were invited. 12 showed, 18 completed the SWOT analysis and continue to be involved. And from that group, and they were all told, we cannot do this with somebody else. We have to do what we come up with. So stay focused. And they did it. They broke out, had one person in charge. I had the dizzies or some darn thing. I don't know, my eyes. Anyways, I couldn't function very well. So I turned it over to somebody else. Worked great. Broke into small groups. Small groups came back with their solutions to individual items. And that group then came up with this. And this is running quite well. I won't go through all the details. The one that we're really charged with is organizational structure 1. And the underlying question is, how do you replace me and Tom Thibodeau? And Tom says, I'm not giving up. Well, I'm not talking about giving up. We have to have our replacement, and it's pertinent. And so that is well developed, and we got one little kernel that just may come together in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll take that back to our boot-up meeting and then have something to refine and share with everybody. But that's what's happening there in Wisconsin. Now keep in mind, Wisconsin is a beacon in the country and in the world. It's kind of hard to understand that, but it's true. You're the folks right here. There's 3,000 signed up. We tried to clean up that list. We offered to, why don't you, get off the list if you're not opening? Nobody wants to get off the list. It was very interesting, and we have some very good people helping us in this area. Here are all the different, I'm just going to note, we have somebody here from, we have somebody here from Concordia, but I don't know that they're leading that group, are they? No. Alverno, Kim is usually here, but you're taking her place. We got a dean that came in and took her place. You could tell by her feedback. Did you want to say something?
No, we'll see on Thursday.
Okay. Dan is here. Dan, raise your hand. He is the person that started these roundtables, which have evolved considerably. And he handles the downtown, we call it the central. And downtown is the Create Institute at MSOE. Madison, we don't have anybody here from Madison. The Northeast Fox Cities, they're not here. Racine, Bernard has a new job. I haven't got caught up with him yet, but somebody grabbed him and put him in their company based on probably his iterations on what he sees and can do. La Crosse, there's a ton of stuff going on. Fond du Lac, they have a meeting once a month. Now, this is the interesting stuff. These are all the things that are going on in the state organization and connected to some national stuff. The PhD program in Missouri continues on. Their first session was done. In another 2 years, they'll have another session done. These are pre and post doc students. No, they're getting their doc student in education, but it includes character education and servant leadership. But the interesting thing is this 56 seconds, 5,780,000 connections. I don't actually know what that means other than it's articles, books, and discussions. It would include us.